When is it appropriate for Georgia fans to start talking about a dynasty? That is the question that I have for you today. Now, I'll just come out and say I don't think it's fair to give Georgia the dynasty tag just yet. Of course, they are back-to-back national champions, something that just doesn't happen very often in college football. They're on top of the world right now. They're on top of the sport. They are the program in college football right now. And I think that they could absolutely be successful in their quest for a three-peat. We're going to talk about that for months and months heading into the 23 season. But I do think it's time to start talking about the possibility of a dynasty being in the making. And if they go on to win 2 championships in the next 4 years, right, or even one next year, if they win a three-peat, yes, they are in full dynasty mode. I think you have to have at least 3. You probably need 4 championships to start talking about a legitimate dynasty, which is, in a certain amount of time, right? Alabama got 6 in 12 years. And I guess if they win next year, they're still, in dynasty mode. If you've got a dynasty going on, and feel free to correct me if you think I'm wrong in the comment section, but it takes 3 years of not winning one, in my opinion, for the dynasty to go away. So Alabama had won 6 out of 12, dating back to 2009. Haven't won the last 2 because of the Georgia Bulldogs. But I think next year, Georgia can really slam the door on Alabama's dynasty that they've had for a little over a decade now. And, say, okay, now this is our time. We've been on top of college football for the last 2 seasons. We're the champs, but we've won 3 in a row. And now we're talking about, possibly having the greatest dynasty we've ever seen in college football history. And, the word dynasty, we talk about it, but it's not something that happens often. Alabama is, still, you can make the case that they're still in one, right? I think there was one period of time in this gigantic stretch where they did not win a national championship. So I might be kind of talking over myself, so to speak, but they were very good. In 2009, they won it in obviously 11 and 12. 15, 17, 20, right? I talk about Alabama's titles quickly because I know Georgia fans don't really like talking about that. But, I think they need one more year of not winning the title in 23 to say, okay, that's done. But Georgia has a real chance to, add a couple more trophies to that case. And if that happens, I think we can look back and say, okay, the dynasty actually started in 2021 with that first season, winning in 22. And again, I think most Georgia fans understand that there's a real possibility of them winning a 3rd straight. You look at the schedule, it's very favorable. It could not be set up any nicer for Georgia. And again, we do this every season, but it feels like there's only 1, 2, maybe 3 teams who can, play with Georgia next year. And I know there's no Todd Monken, there's no Stetson Bennett, there's no Keely Ringo, no Jalen Carter. The team is going to be different, but it's still going to be very, very good, led by Carson Beck in his 4th year, Mike Bobo, the play caller, an experienced guy there. They still have Kirby Smart. Who is going to prepare them as well as any head coach in the country week after week. He's built a culture. He's built, a winning DNA that is just ingrained in this program now. Toughness, discipline, composure. These are things that he just, preaches time and time again, year after year. And it's stuck with every team that's come through recently. They are a tough physical football team, but they stay disciplined, they stay composed, and that's not going to leave this program. That's ingrained, right? And the winning. They know how to win. They know how to run a program. So he's got it rolling. He's got this machine going right now. And it's as good as a machine as, we've seen outside of Alabama. Miami felt like they had a dynasty right in the early 2000s. That 01 team was one of the best in college football history. Should have won it in 02. The Buckeyes got a very favorable PI call that went their way. They won in overtime, but that's not a dynasty because you only won 1. Southern Cal felt like they had a dynasty going on. I don't give them credit for the 2003 championship. I think the LSU Tigers were the 2003 champions. In my opinion, how I remember it, how I see it, they're the champs. So in 03 it was LSU, 04 Southern Cal, and they could have gone back-to-back in 05, but Vince Young and the Longhorns came calling, right? So it had a dynasty feel to it, but again, they only had 1. I'll give them 1.5. I'll give them that half with LSU. I hate breaking up those titles, right? Michigan gets a half. what was it, 97? They had to split that with Nebraska. You get a half. You don't get a full championship. You get half a flag. You get half a banner that you get to hold up. Nebraska won back-to-back in the 90s. That's not a dynasty. I think Oklahoma, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have the numbers in front of me, probably should, but Oklahoma, I think in the 70s had a nice little run. Alabama with Bear Bryant had a nice little run. But again, we're going back 30 and 40 years now. And I think Georgia has a real chance of, creating a dynasty. Again, they're not there yet. I'm not saying that Georgia has started a dynasty. I'm still talking about Alabama. It's still kind of having one. I mean, this 12, I guess the past 14 years, they've won 6 national titles. That's as good as you're going to find across college football, at least for the last 50 years. But if they win a couple recently, then you'd still have to mark this as, a full 15-year run. But if Georgia gets the three-peat, they are shutting that Alabama dynasty door down and starting their own. And then you are talking about a real current dynasty that the Georgia Bulldogs have going on. But I do think there needs to be rules. There needs to be rules. There needs to be 3 out of 4 to call yourself a dynasty, right? 5 out of 7, 5 out of 8. That's a dynasty. We need guidelines. We need regulations for the dynasty talk, right? And because right now, I think it's just up to anyone to say that's a dynasty, that's not. You have to have 3. You have to have 3. I think you should have 4, but 3 in a row gets you a dynasty. You can talk about that. But I do think that Georgia fans are allowed to talk about the possibility of this being the start of a dynasty. Now, they still have to win a couple more, and I think they will. I've said that for a while. I think Georgia will win at least 4 titles with Kirby Smart. So I think they're going to win at least 2 and probably in the next several years. But they could absolutely do it in 23. They've got a very talented quarterback room behind Carson Beck, too. If Dylan Raiola comes on board, you're talking about a guy who's being compared to Patrick Mahomes. You put him in Georgia's system, you let Mike Bobo coach that guy and put an elite defense behind him and have 5-star offensive linemen blocking for him, a couple 5-star tight ends, 5-star running back or 2. There's no ceiling to this Georgia program. They can go as far and as high on the mountain, as I've talked about, in previous videos, as they want. And they can climb this mountain higher than any program has climbed before. Because right now they're at the top of the mountain that only Alabama has been able to see, right? Florida has never seen, Florida fans have never seen their program as high as Georgia's is right now. Tennessee fans have never seen the Tennessee Volunteers on top of the college football world like Georgia is right now. Same for LSU, same for Auburn. What those programs would do for back-to-back championships. And that's what Kirby's done right now. And again, you cannot write the history of college football without talking about these 2 seasons that Georgia just had. And I think the dynasty talk is real. But Alabama is, the latest dynasty. I think Georgia's always had the resources and the tools to get to that point, and that's what they're doing right now. Georgia's been a sleeping giant. They said that about the Florida program when Steve Spurrier took over. They said Steve Spurrier could wake a sleeping giant. That's what he did. Even though he only had 1 national championship, Urban Meyer won 2 out of 3. That's not a dynasty, though. That's a very good run. And again, back-to-back doesn't make you have a dynasty, but 3 in a row does. And I think, 4 out of 6 or 7, I mean, you can talk about that being a real possibility down the road. The way Kirby's built this program, the way he's recruited, the toughness and the talent that they have on both offense and defenses, right? We've seen Georgia teams be able to score a ton, but they give up a ton. We've seen, Georgia with great defenses lose a couple games because the offense couldn't get it together. But the last 2 years, they've had an elite defense with an elite offense. And I think they could be very, very good on both sides of the ball again in 2023. That's what I expect. And I expect that moving forward. The Georgia program's not going anywhere. And with the expanded playoff coming, you can, probably count on Georgia being in the playoff just about every year, especially with 12 teams. So there's always a chance that they could bring another championship to Athens. They did it once, and they opened that program up. The sky opened up, and now they're just trying to accomplish everything they can. And again, most programs have a ceiling. Just about all of them have a ceiling of how good they can be. Georgia doesn't have one of those. Again, they've got the talent, they've got the resources, the tools, the fan base, the facilities, the program history, the recruiting, background, the recruiting landscape, the culture, the DNA. They've got it all to win more national championships and build a dynasty that could have started already. We're not going to know about that until a couple more years, actually a few more years, but I think it's okay for Georgia fans to talk about the possibility of this being the start of a dynasty. They don't have one right now. They could have one very soon. What do you think? Leave a comment in the section below. Thanks for watching this video. As always, stay tuned to the next one that's coming up right now. And I will see you over on Dog Post.